asked me to do this, she said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, I'm going to talk about my brand, my podcast, which is called Ageless. So what does it mean to be ageless? When I was thinking about retiring, I was on a hike with a bunch of my girlfriends, and I said, I want to do a podcast about women, for women, and specifically talking about some of the things that we encounter in midlife, right? Some of the obstacles. And one of them is feeling maybe not as relevant, feeling unseen, feeling like maybe there's not another chapter for me. So we were hiking, and Beth, you might have been on this hike, I don't know. We were like talking about different ideas for a name, and Ageless came up. And what's interesting is now, in the past year, through this journey, the word has come to mean something different to me. What it means to me now is being ageless means don't ever let somebody define what you're capable of by your age. And I mean that in both directions. So if you're on the younger side and somebody says, well, you're not old enough to do that, you don't have enough experience, you don't have enough wisdom, ignore that. Do it anyway. Learn something from it, even if you fail. And if you're my age, 50 plus, something like that, don't let somebody tell you you're too old. You're too old to do something. So one of the things that I do when I talk about my journey is looking back, because I think we have to look back to our younger selves to understand where we came from and where we want to go. So this is a little journey down memory lane. These are some lovely outfits that my mother put me in as a child. Specifically love the Easter outfit with the stuffed skunk, which she's never been able to explain. This is first grade, first day of first grade, and what you can't see is this little Burberry lunchbox, the hard metal kind, and then my little penny loafers that actually had pennies in them. So, and the mullet haircut. The mullet obviously was a big thing in the 70s. But one of the things I think about when I think about growing up is I think about what did people tell you about yourself and what did you believe, okay? So it could be anything. Well, you're not good at this. You're not smart. You're not funny. You're not strong. Well, one of the things that I was told, and this is very specific, I remember this, it was on my report cards, you don't have good fine motor skills. So my entire life, I didn't do things because I thought, my first grade teacher told me I don't have good fine motor skills. It does help sometimes, like putting a fitted sheet on the bed. I tell my husband, I can't do that. I can't take a necklace and get a little knot out of it. All these things. But the reality was, I just internalized that and believed it. And actually, I do intend to write a memoir someday called Poor Fine Motor Skills. Because what it really was that I was just impatient. I just didn't want to sit and learn things. So for about 50 years, I believed I had poor fine motor skills. And then I started to reflect on my life and think, wait a minute, maybe I just believed something someone told me and I didn't actually examine it. So we have to really consider what people told us and challenge those beliefs. So another thing I think about is, what did you want to be, right, when you were growing up? I want to be a ballerina, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor. And of course there were so many jobs that we didn't know existed today, right? I want to be a digital creator. What is that? What would that have meant back then? I want to be a podcaster. But there is a grain of truth in that voice of the little girl who said, when I grow up, I want to be. So I'm going to tell you what I said I wanted to be, and then we'll get back to that at the end of my presentation. Does anybody remember cassette recorders? Raise your hand. 70s and 80s. So my parents had a cassette recorder and they gave me unlimited access to batteries and tapes. And I would make shows and I would do talk shows and I would be the host and also the guest, of course. And they even had a little external mic coming out of the cassette. The other thing I did is I would do commercials. So like I would go around the house and find my mother's dishwashing liquid, shampoo, whatever I could find, and do commercials. And by the way, I'm looking for sponsors, so if anybody wants me to do commercials on my podcast, I'm available. But again, you kind of shove that voice back in your head, right? And you go on to do other things, which is not a bad thing because most of us are not going to be astronauts or ballerinas. But there is still a grain of truth in what we thought about as a child. So I like to call these the years of big hair and big dreams. So that's college up there, lovely hairstyle, and this would be high school prom, roller skating, and high school graduation. Not sure what was going on with the Little House on the Prairie dresses. I'm guessing that was a style. But one of the things I look at when I look at these pictures, one of the things I think about is, wow, when we were young, we were creative and we were joyful and we had all this energy. And you know, it would be so nice to have a time machine, wouldn't it? To just jump back in time and be that person again. But guess what we didn't have? We didn't have wisdom, right? We didn't have life experience. So as we think about transforming our lives and moving forward and figuring out next chapters, we need to figure out, how can we harness that? How can we harness that energy, that joy, that creativity, but then blend it with what we have now, which is wisdom and life experience. So I thought about this very specifically. Before I show you this next slide, I'm gonna set it up. I went to a concert this summer in Las Vegas. I'm not even gonna tell you the band because I'm gonna let you guess. But I had been to this same concert in 1990, and I said, wouldn't it be fun if I could find those two pictures? Which I did, and put them together. Yeah, so 34 years apart. I certainly don't look like that in a bathing suit anymore. But, you know, the fact is, you can reconnect with those feelings and that person. Anybody want to guess what concert this is?
What month is it? 2024? Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead, yes. Yeah, both of them were Grateful Dead concerts. And I actually kind of marveled at the fact that my sunglasses weren't that different, and the head tilt, right? Just in a different direction. It wasn't that different. One of the things that we do in the United States, and I say the United States because I don't think it's the same everywhere, in my experience, is that we are defined by what we do, right? That is how we lead. When we meet somebody, we tell them what we do. When we meet somebody, we ask them what we do. What if we said, what do you enjoy? What gives you passion? What is your purpose? If we started redefining how we communicate about our lives and what we do in our lives. So just to give you a little bit of background, when I worked at WRAL, and I worked a little bit at a couple other stations before that, I operated all the time like my hair was on fire. I had no time to step back, to think. I had no space. And I chose that career, so I'm not saying it had anything to do with the job, it's the industry. But I started at 6:45 in the morning with texts and emails, and I ended at 11:45 at night with texts and emails. And even though I wasn't technically on call, I was 24/7, 7 days a week. There was really no time to think about anything. I was on at noon, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7. And I didn't know how to triage anything because everything was like just a crisis. Everything was, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. But you know, the thing about us as women is that we are so many things, right? We're not what we do. That is part of who we are. You know, looking at this collage that I made, I mean, I'm a wife, I'm a writer, I'm a friend, I'm a yogi, I'm a mother, I'm a volunteer, I'm a speaker, I'm a hiker, I'm a runner. And I think that we often fail to acknowledge that those parts of us are so important. Not only are they important, but they make us more interesting, right? If we were just our jobs, if we were just our careers, I mean, I have daughters in their 20s now, and they'll say, I'm bored, I don't like my job, it's too hard, it's too many hours. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you might feel that way in your first job, your second job, maybe even your third job, but the reality is you're learning. You're learning to get along in the world. You're learning what you like, what you don't like. You're learning skills. You're learning how to get along with people. Those are all really good things, but that doesn't define you. What defines you is all this other stuff. And I think, again, part of the problem is we discount how important those other things are. So we are our own worst critics as women, right? This is one of the things that I often do when I talk to a group of women. This is my great-grandmother's mirror. So when we get up in the morning, we maybe go into the bathroom, wash your face. If you have contacts, put your contacts in, and you look in the mirror, right? What do we see? Anybody want to venture a guess what women see when they look in the mirror? We see our flaws, I thought I heard somebody say, right? So you see gray hair, you might see wrinkles, you might see bags under your eyes. You see imperfections, and guess what you see? You see things that other people don't see. If you turn to the woman next to you, whether you know her or not, and you ask her to describe you, she's gonna say positive things about you. Because that's how we are as women, right? We're nurturers, we support each other. What does a man see when he looks in the mirror?
Oh, look at this.
He says, I look good, right? Isn't that what and the thing is, we all have men in our lives that we love and respect, but because there is a built-in cultural confidence about being a man, and for some reason, women historically have been undermined in that space. And we are a youth-centered culture, there's no doubt about it. But what we have is we have these negative voices, right, in our heads. So in order to be the best you have to be able to quiet those voices and say, you know what, that's not who I am, and that's not how I see myself. And again, it's going back to this finding purpose, finding passion. Instead of saying, I'm gonna find somebody who needs my skill set, why don't you figure out what your passion is, what your purpose is, and then figure out how to align those two things. One of the things that I was my whole life, still am, my friends would probably say, is an adrenaline junkie. So to that end, everybody was like, you need to do yoga. And I was like, oh no. I am not gonna sit in a dark room for an hour without a phone and stretch. That is not happening. Well, I finally, after many injuries from running and other health things that I thought could be beneficial to do yoga, I started doing it. Now, I'm not gonna say this is not a self-help talk. I'm not gonna tell you run out and get a yoga membership, but I will say that it did change me in so many ways. That 1 hour gave me the ability to stop the hair on fire feeling, to sit back and have some space and reflect. And how are we ever going to make decisions about what we really want to do in life and who we are if we can't find that space? And they always say in yoga, find space. And they mean it literally with your body, but I always think about it as I'm finding space with my mind. And I literally think I rewired my brain with yoga because it gave me permission to just be, to not be thinking every second, what do I have to do next? I have to send this email, I have to make this call, I have to set this Zoom up. The other thing they always say in yoga, which I absolutely love, is you can change on and off your mat. And in the beginning I thought, well, this is corny, that's not true. But you know what? I do believe it's true. So that picture was taken at 150 classes. I started in January of 23. As of last count, I don't know exactly, but I think I'm at 425. So I leaned in hard, and I really believe that it has given me a new perspective, not just on health and what is important for our physical health, but what's important for our emotional and our mental health. One of the things I strongly believe in is that women need to support other women. And that's what you guys are here for. That's what this group is all about. I always have said that I stand on my mother's shoulders, my mother stands on her mother's shoulders. We stand on the shoulders of grandparents, of teachers, of coaches, of women that have gone before us, who have given us advice, who have supported us, who have mentored us. when I was at WREL, I started podcasting towards the end of my time there, and one of the things I did was a daily news show, and I would interview my younger colleagues about their stories. And they would come to my booth, and they were supposed to be there for like 20 minutes, and they would stay for an hour and a half. And at the time, I looked at it as just this fun exchange of ideas. But what was really happening was that I was mentoring them, and they in turn were giving me great new ideas and energy and giving me permission to think about trying new things. So I think it's really important as we move through life, especially as women, that we help each other and support each other. One of the women who profoundly changed my life was my mother. My mom was a lawyer. She went back to law school in her late 30s, which was crazy in the 70s. And we were, my brother and I think I was, we were adolescents. And my mom was fun, she was smart, she was strong, she was a family attorney. She developed a brain tumor in 2012, and I became her primary caregiver. And of course, I'd been learning from my mother my entire life because she was my mother and we were very close. But when she was dying, I all of a sudden felt like I have to glean this wisdom from her. Like, this is it. And literally, there were, I would say, several things that she told me while she was dying. So these are actual, deathbed statements. And one of the things she said to me was, don't do what I did. Don't work yourself to death. She was 71, she was still working 50, 60 hours a week. She had her own practice. And she said, take time to enjoy life. Take time to surround yourself with the people you love and to support people you love and allow them to support you. And that was a very important lesson. And guess when I finally started thinking, I'm gonna do this? Last year. So it took me 11, 12 years to internalize that. But I realized that she was right. I had a friend who was retiring last year in TV, and I keep saying last year, 2023. I keep forgetting we're in 2025. And he was very experienced reporter, had been with our company a very long time. And I said, well, why are you retiring? I mean, why are you doing it now? You could just glide into retirement. He wasn't old enough to technically retire. And he said, I'm on a boat and I've got 3 meals a day and I'm warm and I'm comfortable and I like the people around me and I can see land. And he said, but all I want to do is jump off the boat and swim. And that really stuck with me because as I thought about it, what he was saying is, if not now, when, right? I mean, you can stick with something comfortable or you can do something uncomfortable and maybe find something new. So in January of 24, I jumped off the boat. And that's my going away party at the station. And I really didn't have a huge idea of what I was going to do, but I had this idea to interview women, to create a podcast. I had a team at WREL. I had never done anything technically. I had never edited video or audio. I had never done marketing. I had never done my own social media. And so through watching a lot of YouTube videos, I went out, I bought equipment, I taught myself how to do all of these things. And I won't bore you with them because I'm sure a lot of you know how to do them. But it took me a long time because it was all very new to me. But what I found was that I had this great support of the women that I was interviewing, and they all had such interesting stories. And at first I thought all of these stories were going to be career related. Well, what I found out when I started talking to these women was that no, their actual hurdles, their obstacles, the things they overcame in life were personal, right? Because life doesn't happen in a vacuum. And we talked about everything from addiction to grief to loss to cancer, loss of a child, loss of a spouse, you name it, divorce, everything that a lot of women have experienced. And I really felt like not only was I learning, but my audience was learning. So to date, I have posted 55 shows, and I intend to continue this. This year I'm going to focus on a lot of topics, hot topics like menopause, weight loss drugs, adult children coming home to the empty nest, many things that a lot of women are dealing with. And one of the best things I heard when I was starting out was I listened to a podcast with Julia Louis-Dreyfus called Wiser Than Me. I hadn't listened to it when I came up with mine, but she's also very famous, so lots of people listen to hers, a lot more. But anyway, she interviewed Jane Fonda. And Jane Fonda, of course, award-winning actress, fitness guru, advocate for social justice, so many different things. But she was married to Ted Turner. She's now, I think, in her 80s. But she was married to Ted Turner. She was 59. She was living on this beautiful ranch out west. And she had money, she had power, she had fame. She really didn't have to do anything for the rest of her life. And she said, I woke up one day and I looked out at this beautiful ranch and I'm in this beautiful house. And I just said, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So I would challenge anyone who thinks, oh, I don't have another chapter. I would challenge you to say, yes, you do. You're not done yet. And whatever that means, that might mean for you, it might mean going on a solo hiking trip, in Spain. It might mean running a marathon. It might mean writing a book. It might mean, oh, I've always wanted to teach and I've never done that. There's so many things that can mean. It doesn't have to be career related. So to recap, being ageless doesn't define your potential, whether you're young or I'm not going to say old, my age. Live your purpose, not someone else's. So think about your passion, your purpose, and not what somebody else expects of you. Be open to change. I think this is such an important one. Change is really hard, right? And it's also really scary. It's uncomfortable. My daughter just went on this journey of a lifetime. She's in college, and she went to hike a mountain in Patagonia in Chile. And when we talked about her going on the trip, I said, you do realize that a big part of this, it was a leadership group, is learning how to be okay with being uncomfortable. I said, you're gonna be wet, you're gonna be cold, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be sore, you're gonna be hungry. You may not like everybody in your group, but you have to figure out how to get through that. And so that's part of change, is being uncomfortable. And then going back to that earlier slide, tapping into your childhood dreams, well, I realized that is exactly what I'm doing. My podcast is a talk show. Of course, back then, nobody would have been able to come up with the idea for a podcast. And I was probably looking more at Merv Griffin and Sally Jesse Raphael than I was looking at, what I'm doing now. But I really realized that, wow, no matter what else I do in my life, I have tapped in to that dream that I had as an 8-year-old to be a talk show host. I'm a writer, so I have a ton of quotes that I love to share, but this is one of my favorite ones. And for a long time, I had an old typewriter in my front hallway in my old house with this quote on it for people to read when they came in. This is the poet Mary Oliver. Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. So I just think about that and internalize it. There's one guaranteed, and it is wild and it is precious. So what do you want to do? Passion, purpose equals magic. Thank you, guys.